I was sitting alone in my favorite diner, enjoying a cup of coffee and a plate of scrambled eggs. It was a typical morning, but something felt off. A strange sensation, like a crawling feeling under my skin, had been bothering me all morning. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I finished my breakfast and got up to leave, the sensation intensified. It was like something was trying to break free from inside me. As I stepped outside, I noticed a flyer on a nearby bulletin board advertising a barbecue. It was being held by a family I had never heard of, in a location I had never been to. But something about the flyer caught my attention, and I felt compelled to attend. That night, I found myself in a clearing deep in the woods. The family was already gathered around a large fire pit roasting meat on spits. They welcomed me warmly and offered me a plate of barbecue. I eagerly accepted, but as I took my first bite, the strange sensation I had been feeling all day returned with a vengeance. It was like the meat was alive, squirming and wriggling in my mouth. I tried to swallow, but the meat seemed to grow larger and more resistant, as if it was trying to crawl back up my throat. Panic set in, and I stumbled away from the fire pit. As I stumbled through the woods trying to escape the terrible sensation, I heard a low, guttural growl. It was like nothing I had ever heard before, a sound that made my blood run cold. I turned to run, but something caught my foot and sent me tumbling to the ground. When I looked back, I saw a grotesque, eldritch horror emerging from the shadows. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, a monstrous amalgamation of flesh and tentacles. It reached out for me with its writhing appendages, and I knew that I was in mortal danger. I scrambled to my feet and ran as fast as I could, hearing the creature's eerie growls echoing through the woods behind me. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, and even then I felt like it was following me. As I drove away from that cursed place, I knew that I had stumbled upon something far beyond my understanding. The barbecue had been like a gateway, opening up a portal to a realm of unspeakable horrors. I knew that I could never go back there, but I also knew that I would never forget the strange sensations that had plagued me that night. Something had awakened inside me, something that would never let me rest until I had uncovered the truth behind that terrible barbecue. I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had engulfed me after the terrible barbecue. I spent the next few days researching about the family that had invited me, but couldn't find any information about them. It was like they didn't exist. But then I received an anonymous email from someone who claimed to know about the family's secret. The email contained a single word: barbecue sauce. Intrigued, I decided to investigate further. I went back to the woods, determined to find out what had happened that night. As I walked through the woods, I noticed a strange smell that seemed to be emanating from a nearby cabin. Curiosity getting the best of me, I cautiously approached the cabin. As I peered through the window, I saw jars of a thick brown liquid that looked like barbecue sauce. But there was something odd about it, something that made my stomach churn. I decided to investigate further and knocked on the cabin door. A woman answered, her eyes darting nervously as she spoke to me. I asked her about the barbecue sauce, and she hesitated before inviting me in. Inside, I saw a large pot simmering on the stove, filled with the same brown liquid I had seen in the jars. She told me that it was a secret family recipe passed down from generation to generation. But there was something sinister about it, something that made my skin crawl. As she spoke, I noticed that her movements were jerky and unnatural, as if she was being controlled by something. It was then that I realized that the barbecue sauce was not just a recipe, but a key to unlocking something far more terrifying. I knew that I had to leave, but as I turned to go, the woman lunged at me, her eyes glowing with a demonic light. I fought back, struggling to escape her grasp. In the struggle, I knocked over the pot of barbecue sauce, spilling it all over the floor. As the sauce spread across the floor, I noticed something strange happening. It was like the sauce was alive, writhing and squirming like a living creature. Then I heard the growls again coming from the woods outside. The eldritch horror had returned, drawn by the scent of the barbecue sauce. I knew that I had to get out of there before it was too late. I ran out of the cabin and into the woods, the sounds of the creature's growls getting louder and closer. I knew that I had to find a way to stop it before it was too late. As I ran, I noticed something glinting in the moonlight. It was a knife embedded in a nearby tree. I pulled it out and turned to face the creature. With a roar, it emerged from the trees, its tentacles flailing wildly. I brandished the knife, ready to fight to the death. As the creature lunged at me, I plunged the knife into its fleshy mass. It let out a terrible shriek and then dissolved into a thick brown liquid. The barbecue sauce of the eldritch horror had been defeated, but I knew that the family's secret would continue to haunt me. I left the woods, knowing that I had stumbled upon something far beyond my comprehension, something that would never let me rest. After my encounter with the eldritch horror, I thought I could finally put the nightmare behind me. But the horrors of that terrible night continued to haunt me in my dreams. I would wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat. The image of the tentacled monster burned into my mind. I knew that I couldn't keep living like this, that I had to confront the family and demand answers. I went back to the cabin, hoping to find the woman who had invited me to the barbecue. But when I arrived, the cabin was empty, and there was no sign of anyone having lived there in months. I searched the nearby woods, hoping to find some clue as to where the family had gone. But all I found were strange occult symbols etched into the trees. It was then that I realized that the family's secret was far more sinister than I had originally thought. The barbecue sauce was not just a recipe, but a part of an ancient ritual that had been passed down through generations. I knew that I had to find a way to stop the ritual before it was too late, but I had no idea where to begin. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I became obsessed with the family's secret, scouring every library and occult bookstore in the area, searching for any information that could help me stop the ritual. And then, one day, I received an anonymous phone call. The voice on the other end told me that they had information about the family and that they were willing to help me stop the ritual. I met the caller at a nearby park, and they handed me a small, leather-bound book. It was filled with strange symbols and incantations, but the caller told me that it contained the key to stopping the ritual. I studied the book for weeks, trying to decipher its cryptic contents, but the more I read, the more confused and terrified I became. It was then that I realized that I was in over my head. I had stumbled upon something far beyond my understanding, something that could destroy me and everything I held dear. I knew that I had to destroy the book and all evidence of the family's secret before it was too late. But as I was about to burn the book, I felt a cold, icy wind blowing through the room, and then I heard the growls again, coming from outside. The eldritch horror had returned, and this time it was angrier than ever. I tried to flee, but the creature was too fast. It emerged from the shadows, its tentacles flailing wildly, and I knew that it was the end for me. But then something strange happened. The book in my hands began to glow, and a blinding light filled the room. The creature let out a terrible shriek and then dissolved into nothingness. I was left alone, surrounded by the ashes of the book and the remnants of the eldritch horror. I knew that I had been given a second chance, but I also knew that the horrors of that terrible night would never truly leave me. After the incident with the eldritch horror, I thought that everything was over. But it turned out that there were unforeseen consequences to my actions. Months went by, and I tried to move on with my life. But strange things kept happening. Objects in my house would move on their own, and I would hear whispers in the dead of night. I knew that it was the eldritch horror haunting me from beyond the grave, but there was nothing that I could do about it. One day I received a letter in the mail. It was from the woman who had invited me to the barbecue. She explained that her family had been conducting the ritual for generations in the hopes of summoning a powerful being from beyond the stars. She went on to explain that the eldritch horror that I had encountered was not the being that they had intended to summon. In fact, they had no idea what it was. But they did know one thing. I had inadvertently disrupted the ritual, causing the summoning to fail. And now, the being that they had intended to summon was free to roam the earth, wreaking havoc wherever it went. I was horrified by what I had done. I had thought that I was doing the right thing, but in reality I had unleashed an even greater evil upon the world. I knew that I had to do something to stop the being, but I had no idea where to begin. I turned to the only person I knew who might be able to help me. Corbin. Corbin had always been interested in the occult, and he had a wealth of knowledge about supernatural creatures. He listened to my story and then told me that there was only one way to stop the being. We would have to perform the ritual ourselves, summoning the being back to its home dimension. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the only one that we had. We gathered all of the necessary ingredients and performed the ritual in a secluded clearing in the woods. At first, nothing happened. But then, a portal opened in the sky, and a being of incredible power emerged. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Its body was made of pure energy, and it radiated a sense of power and majesty. We offered it the sacrifices that it demanded, and it accepted them without hesitation. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished back into the portal, leaving us alone in the clearing. We had succeeded in our mission. The being had been sent back to its home dimension, and the world was safe once again. But as we walked back to our cars, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something about the whole ordeal didn't sit right with me. And then I realized what it was. The being that we had summoned was not the one that the family had intended to summon. It was something else entirely. The family's secret ritual had unintentionally opened a portal to a dimension filled with unimaginable horrors. And now those horrors were free to enter our world. I knew that we had just made a terrible mistake, and that the true consequences of our actions were yet to be seen. Hey there, everyone. As we come to the end of this spine-tingling barbecue horror story, I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and listening to my tale. Your support and attention mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that I could share this story with all of you. I hope it left you feeling a bit scared and on edge, but also entertained and engaged. I also want to remind you all to be careful and aware of your surroundings, even in places that you might consider safe and familiar. You never know what could be lurking just around the corner. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me for more spooky stories in the future. Your host, Average Joe.